First of all, I want to thank Buddy Aiken and my son Michael Trenham for pulling this group together and inviting all of you. And it's overwhelming how many of you showed up. If you can't hear me, let me know. But my original idea was that I was going to recognize all of my guests and welcome my guests, welcome the GAP guests. But if I did that, I think we'd have to order breakfast. So I think I'm going to skip a few of you, unfortunately. Anyway, first of all, Dr. Rose, member of St. David's. He came to me last spring and said that he wanted to nominate me, wanted to be okay, he wanted to nominate me for the Golf Association of Philadelphia's Distinguished Service Award. I didn't know that he even knew there was such a thing. I was astounded. I knew there was because Victor Mullock and Bruce Parkinson had won it as past presidents of St. David's. So it was really an honor to just to be nominated. So anyway, then we talked about we filled out the form and we talked about who might write a letter, and I mentioned Chris Kohlmeyer because I knew the GAP would know who he is. So he's, for the people who don't know, he's the genius behind Golf Genius. He's come a long way from growing up in East Falls and jumping the fence at Walnut Lane and sneaking on, and here he is. Shows you what you can do through golf. So thank you very much. He wrote a letter for me, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with me being here right now. And Dr. Rose wrote a letter, of course, and Ken Jones, was the president of St. David's, wrote a letter, and he spent hours and hours making St. David's even better than it already was. And he's made many contributions, and I want to thank him for all that. And Buddy Aiken, who's very involved with the J. Wood Platt Scholarship Fund, he wrote a letter, and I knew he had his finger on the pulse of the Golf Association of Philadelphia, so he'd be the perfect one to write a letter. So thank you very much. And that must be why I'm here, all those wonderful letters. So, because I'm the history guy, I have to give you some history. And I hope it doesn't take too long, but anyway, when I was in the second grade, my parents moved to Florida because of my health, see if they could help me live. So Florida did help, and when I was 10 years old, they built a 9-hole semi-private golf course in the town, and my father and brother decided that they'd see what golf was all about, and they took me along, and they even let me hit one ball, I think. And before you knew it, I was caddying and playing golf, and the dues were $60 a year for a family. And I probably played 300 rounds. So it really was pretty affordable. Along with caddying, I probably made as much money caddying as we spent on the membership, I'm sure. So within a month, I was probably addicted to golf. It didn't take long. And we really couldn't afford to have a golf pro. But we had a pro that came down from Ohio in the winter time, and they had an apartment on the clubhouse, and he had a free place to live, and they gave him all the concessions, no salary. And he and his wife came, and they didn't have any children, and I started working for him, and pretty soon I wanted to be just like him. And lots of other PGA pros would stop by to see him because he was an officer in the Northern Ohio PGA, and I would caddy for them, and when I got a little older, I'd play with them, and I thought these guys are really awesome, really good. But the pro I grew up under, Stanley Kuznick, he spent hours trying to talk me out of being a golf pro. He said, there's got to be something you can do better than this. So he even had me come and work for him when I was in college at the Aurora Country Club in the summers, and trying to show me how bad it was. it proved to be that he made me close every night. I had to be the closing man. And the way he did it, of course, Cleveland, Ohio is on the other end of the Eastern time zone. And people came home from work and then played 18 holes, and I'd be there waiting for them to finish. So I guess it's my addiction that it didn't do it. And then a lot of people talked to me about that. And one man even gave me a job in the construction business right out of college. He said, "Come work for me." He said, "You'll never make any money in the golf business." He said, "I'll show you how to make money." So I tried 2 years of that, but that somehow that didn't do it. So anyway, I wound up being an assistant pro in Ohio, and I met somebody who was an assistant at the Philadelphia Country Club, and he left to be the head pro in Pittsburgh, at the Pittsburgh Field Club, and he recommended me to take his position. And somehow, the day before Christmas in 1961, I appeared at the Philadelphia Country Club, and I had a meeting with Loma Frakes, the pro at the Philadelphia Country Club, and somehow talked him into hiring me as his assistant. So I really didn't know much about Philadelphia. I just figured if I could work at the Philadelphia Country Club, I could send a resume anywhere in the United States, and somebody might look at it. The Philadelphia Country Club sounded like something, if you didn't know anything about it, you might read it. So I thought maybe that'd be a worthwhile thing to do if I could possibly wrangle that. So I started at Philadelphia Country Club on March 15th, 1962. And Tim DeBoffrey was an assistant there. He was a new assistant, and Tim DeBoffrey really knew what he was doing because his father was a pro at Wildwood. He was only 22 years old, but he knew most everything about golf. And he was one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. I've never heard Tim say anything bad about anybody. Nothing. It's hard to believe, I think. So anyway, the next Monday after I started there, Leo Frazier was running a tournament down at Atlantic City, like a warm-up tournament. So Tim drove me down to Atlantic City Country Club, and we were paired with Howard Everett. And God, I'm playing with this guy, I never heard of him. And he could really play. And I thought, man, maybe I'm in over my head here in Philadelphia. I got amateurs that play this well. In Cleveland, I could beat most of the amateurs, but I thought, I may be in trouble here, you know. So anyway, then the next Monday was the Philadelphia Golf Show, run by the Philadelphia PGA. And it was really, really well done. And Leo Frazier was running the section then, and they had the salesman there, and they had all sorts of lessons going on, and I started thinking, I've come to a special place. You know, I think Philadelphia, this golf town is really something. Really, grown up in Florida, and I've been in Cleveland in 4 summers, and this was different somehow. And then it has to be a great town. It sports 3 TV golf shows. That's hard to believe. So anyway, the next thing was the ladies' team matches. Riverton Country Club came calling with Doc Porter. So playing number 1 against Helen Wilson. So it was a rainy morning and I didn't have any lessons, so I grabbed an umbrella and I went out. There's a U.S. Women's Amateur Champion playing against the one that's been a runner-up, and right behind hers is Glenn O'Vare, playing number 2, who had won 6 U.S. Women's Amateurs. So then I thought, this is really special. And then after that, it was like U.S. Open qualifying was at Merriam, 36 holes, East and West course. And then after that, the PGA was at Aronimink, 1962. So I really started thinking, this Philadelphia might be worth staying here. You know, so Oh, I missed one thing. The first term of consequence that year was the Whaley Memorial. And Tim and I were paired with Dick Smith. And Dick Smith remembers this better than I do, but the three of us are playing. Who'd have thunk that, you know, Tim was 22, Dick was probably 20, I was 25, all three of us wound up being president of the Philadelphia PGA, and Dick wound up being president of the PGA of America. Three young guys just out there trying to break par, and Tim shot a near perfect round, 67. Dick remembers almost every shot, I think, but Tim did. But anyway, that tournament, Chandler Harper was playing, who the PGA champion from 1950, Art Wall, who had won the Masters in '59, Al Besseling, Henry Williams, Ski Regal. It was really impressive. And Bob Jones, who ran this tournament, had his fellow salesmen helping him, and they all had matching blazers. It was really, really something. And then Ted McKenzie arrived, a friend of Tim's from Duke. Aronimink needed another assistant pro, and Tim called Ted, and Ted came up. And Ted's been my partner in business, and he's been my partner in golf. And he introduced me to my wife, Francie, which is a very nice thing. I will remember him for that. And Francie, my wife, is about the smartest person I've ever known. For 60 years, I've been trying to keep up with her, maybe just stay a couple of steps behind. And we have two wonderful sons, Peter and Michael. And the reason they're great is because of her. And I got more about her later, but anyway. And then next year, Bill Kittleman arrived from Mississippi via Yale and arrived at Marion. Every time I'm with Bill Kittleman, I learn something. It's amazing. And we all, I've played golf with Bill from Maine to Miami to Cypress Point and many places in between. And so there were a bunch of us young guys here. In 1966, there were a bunch of older pros, actually, and it was like a turnover, and so a lot of us younger guys got head pro jobs because the pros we were working for were older and ready to kind of get near retirement. And in '66, St. Davis hired me, and it came down to Ted McKenzie and me, and I was told later it was almost like a coin flip. And the reason I got the job is because the pro at the Philadelphia Country Club had a carpet in the pro shop, and the pro at Aronimink didn't. That's about what the difference was. That they thought neither one of us knew anything about merchandising. We'd been playing golf and giving lessons, and they figured that I'd been exposed to a better merchandising situation than Ted had, so I got the job. And then Ted got the job at Waynesboro the next year, which was great for him, and I think it was great for Waynesboro. They were lucky. So I got married in 1967 to Francie, and I have something to read you. It's Francie's favorite epistle, more than anything I've ever written. This is written by the wife of a pro in the Mid-Atlantic section. And I've edited a little bit for time here, but anyway. You know you are married to a golf pro when you go to Hilton Head on your honeymoon. You mow the grass. The toolbox is yours. The dog knows the mailman, but not your husband. Your husband gets called at 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. from members who are leaving for Florida and need their clubs. There are telephone calls at 2 a.m. from the police that the burglar alarm of the club has been set off. When you go out to dinner, your husband is correcting someone's slice. I've driven to the airport 4 times this year, but I haven't left town. You hate daylight savings time. You pray for rain on Sundays, and then there's golf on TV. My boys is like being raised by a single parent, but anyway. I was at St. David's 6 days a week. I played in golf tournaments on Mondays, and some Sundays, and some Fridays. And then there were PGA committees and PGA meetings, and some of the meetings were out of town. In 1989, on my anniversary, our anniversary, there was a PGA meeting in Chicago. Charles Getter called and said, if we go a day early, we can play Chicago Golf Club. So, with Francie's best wishes, I was playing Chicago Golf Club on our anniversary, 1989. So, it's been quite a ride. From time to time, Francie would say, you probably could do something different. You know, than be a pro at a club. So, 1993, I was driving back from Florida from being at the PGA Merchandise Show, and I started thinking, well, I think this is it. I think I'll do it. I'll give it 2 more years, and that'll be able to see what else was out there. So that fall, I met with Victor Mock, and he always did my contract. He always sat down with me, and he and I worked it out, and I said, he had his papers all on the table, and I said, next year is going to be my last year. He said, we don't have anything to talk about, I guess, he said. That was that. He didn't try to talk me out of it. It was over. So, anyway, everything was really going well here. There's no reason to leave, but it's just like Rob Jeffrey was working for me, and he was the best assistant I ever had, and he was doing most of the work, and I was just riding along and getting all the credit. So, you know, there's no reason for me to leave, but you sort of get the itch to see what else is out there. So, somebody told me that Jim Finning was writing a book on the history of the Golf Association of Philadelphia. So I knew him a little bit. He had come here to play in TV guide outings, and he was a club champion at Philadelphia Country Club. And so I knew him just well enough to call him on the phone. I called him up and I said that I'd heard that there wasn't going to be much in the book about golf pros. And I said, you really can't have a 100-year book on the Golf Association of Philadelphia without much about the golf pros. And he said, well, I don't have time to research that. And not knowing what I was talking about, I said, I'll do it. If you put it in the book, I'll do it. So he says, all right. So I said, I work best with a deadline. Tell me how long I have. And he said, I'll give you a year. Well, that seemed pretty simple. Give me a year. So then Bob Ross called, who'd been the pro at the cricket club, and he was the pro at Baldersroll. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm looking for something to do. And he said, well, I've got this member that has this big manor house in Ireland, and he's just got a golf course that they're trying to get open. He doesn't know anything about golf, and he needs a lot of help. So next thing you know, the guy flew Francie and me over to Ireland for an interview, and after a while we worked out a deal, and we spent 4 months over there and got the place set up and running. We got it open in late August, and we got it good enough to charge people to play there. And so I had to come back to play in the senior club pro in West Palm Beach in early October. So we came back, and then I got a job with Reading Country Club with Bob Thatcher and Joe Dahl, who had been an assistant of mine. And neither one of them wanted to go there, and they were willing to pay me to go there and watch their investment. So I did that for 10 years. And so anyway, I started digging up this history for Jim Finnegan, which I turned into him. I wanted to show you. This was what I went to Temple Library and got on the microfilm, went in the Philadelphia newspapers. And I took an index card. Each one is a year, starting in 1903. That's the year of the first Philadelphia Open, to 1995. And then I put it all on legal pads because he didn't have a computer, and I didn't know how to use a computer. I had bought one during my last year so because I could write it off. I still didn't know how to turn it on. Anyway, so I turned it on legal pads. I wrote out all the stuff year to year, you know, that I thought might be useful and turned it into it. So I started thinking, as I'm doing this, I'm learning a lot of stuff I never heard before. And I'm thinking, this stuff is really interesting. Somebody ought to save this. And I thought, well, I guess it's going to be me. Then I started thinking, what am I going to do with it? And I thought, well, I'd seen a couple of books where it was written like a chronicle. And I said, well, I could probably write a chronicle. I could probably do that. So I started, where am I going to start? Well, the first U.S. Open was played in 1895 at Newport Country Club, and the pro from the Philadelphia Country Club played there. So I said, that's a starting point. So I just started doing that. And so then after I started accumulating some of this stuff, there was a golf magazine run by Fred Behringer, which was in conjunction with the Golf Association of Philadelphia. So I said to Fred Behringer, I've got some stuff that might be interesting for your magazine. So then I wrote a few articles for his magazine. And one day, Bill Orr called. And Bill Orr was a member of Aeronautic, and his background is in film, with filming, doing highlight reels for colleges like Notre Dame and Penn State in Florida. And so somebody I guess he had seen some of my articles or something, and I knew him a little bit. He'd been here to play and member guest. So somebody sent him some film golf reels with golfers on there. And so he asked me to come look at them. And then I could name everybody on every reel, every film, Harry Vardon and Joyce Weather. So then he got this idea that maybe with my help he could make these videos and maybe sell them for pillars at Comcast or something like that. So we created a video on Ben Hogan, we created a video on Johnny McDermott. And while I was doing all this with him, I tell him these Philadelphia golf stories, and he kept saying, you should have a website. What do I want to have a website for? You know, why would I want to have a website? So then one year I was at the Masters with Ron Rolfe, and he introduced me to one of his members down there named Jack Darcy. And Jack Darcy was retired, and he, as a hobby, he had websites. He did a website for Jay Siegel, he did for North Hills, his club and his church. And the kicker was he did it for nothing. And so he said, you need a website. He'd seen my article. I said, what do I need a website for? So finally, I got Jack Darcy and Bill Orr together for lunch one day, and Trenham Golf History was born. And Jack Darcy did all the work, and I sent him stuff. I'd send him discs. In those days, you put the stuff on a disc and put it in the mail and send it to him. And he'd put it up on the website. So then I tell them all these stories, and they said, these stories ought to be on the website. So we created Trenham's Treasure Trove, which I've written about 100 of those that are up on the website. So, and Bill Orr's wife, she edits my writing. And it's wonderful. I send my stuff to her, and she sends it back, and it looks like somebody sprinkled commas all over it. So it's wonderful. All these people have been willing to help me. And then through Chris Kallmeyer, he suggested to Jeff Surratt that they, instead of having two websites running, trying to keep adding to each one, we linked mine to the Philadelphia section. So Jeff Surratt, who's here tonight next to Chris, he agreed we'd do that. And then Matt Fry, who's here, is the communications director, and he helps me with all the website stuff, and I have any problems, he solves them, keeps me moving along, and keeps the website alive. So my wife, Francie, aided and abetted this thing. And I've got over 600 books on the history of golf, and she's bought about 2/3 of them. She goes to every used bookstore. They all know her. When he comes in, they know who she is, what she's looking for. And they're all in the history of the game. I don't buy books on teaching unless I knew the teacher, or things. It's all on the history. I don't buy books about the golf courses. My son Michael, he's more into the golf courses. He's very interested in the golf courses, and I'm interested in the golfers. So, and she listened to all my golf stories more than once. I keep saying, if you've heard this before, tell me. So, and anyway, there's lots of other people who helped me along or assisted me, and Ski Regal introduced me to a man named Bill Early, and he's here tonight. You know, there's golf nuts that don't play golf. Bill Early grew up caddying at Rolling Green, and then he, as a teenager, he helped Leo Frazier run Atlantic City Country Club. But he was smart enough to figure out there had to be a better way to make a living than golf, which he did. But he calls me a couple of times a week just to check in and talk to me about some historical thing having to do with golf in Philadelphia. And it's wonderful people, you know, send me things or check in with me about things because they think I might be interested or might help, might add to it. And last year, John Riley from Wilmington was writing a book on Ed Porky Oliver, a great golfer who grew up in Wilmington. And he called me and he asked me to edit his book. And John Riley knows everything there is to know from the State House to the golf courses in the state of Delaware. So I helped him with that book, which was a great experience. He did a wonderful job on somebody that one of the great golfers that's really forgotten by the present day golfers. And then while I was digging up all this stuff, I started finding things about St. David's, and so I said, oh, that's interesting. So I started saving things I found about St. David's. Then I made up my mind, I'm going to save everything about St. David's that has anything to do with golf. I'm not saving weddings or, you know, stuff like that. But so I started on this creative file, and then one year I went to Dana Boyan, who's the president of the club, and I asked him if I could write some articles for the club's newsletter. I thought if there was something in there like that, maybe more people would read the newsletter. So he said it'd be all right to do that, and I thought I'd write 4 or 5. I've written more than 125 now. So anyway, then one day Ken Jones came to me and said, you think you have enough stuff for a book? And I said, I don't know. So I took him home and I showed him my 2 boxes of files I had, and I sent him home with my files to read, and he decided the club would do a book. So we hired Joe Logan, who's here tonight, right there. And Joe Logan took all of my research, all my stuff, and over with many meetings and whatever, and he made a book out of it, made it something that really is terrific. I'm proud to be part of it, and it really, we just got that out this fall. We just got it finished in the hands of the members. It's really quite an accomplishment, and I'm pleased that I could be a part of it. And you know, the PGA at one time had a logo, or not a logo, but a saying, whatever, making golf a better game. And every one of you in this room is involved with making golf a better game because of what you do and what you have done in golf. And it's a wonderful thing, and just to be here in Philadelphia, to be part of this, to play some small role in this whole history of what's happened in Philadelphia has been a great opportunity. And I just want to thank all of you for this recognition. Thank you very much.